Am I good here? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Howdy. I have to say that legally because I am from the state of Texas, and all my money goes to the real Aggies at Texas A&M, where my daughter goes. So, gig 'em is what she told me to say last night. I'm humbled to be here, really humbled. I really enjoyed the lightning talks. I wish I could give my time back to all those people who gave those lightning talks. It was very interesting. But it's humbling to stand up here because, you know, I'm married. I'm used to getting into a room and not being the smartest one there, but very rarely do I walk into a room and I might be setting the floor for intelligence. So I'm really humbled to be here. So happy to be here. I am not Fernando Salas, who should be here in his spot. He loves this community. He wanted to be here today. He sends his best. He'll see you guys all at the science conference, but I realized when I got here and I started talking to some of you that not many of you may know who I am. So I decided that I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then this way when you see me in the halls, you can bring up something that I'd be okay with talking. I'm a strong introvert, so small talk is not my thing. I got a master's in civil engineering from Central Florida. My undergrad was in meteorology from Northern Illinois University. I am from Chicago. I love the Chicago Bears. I love to hate on Wisconsin. Luckily, none of y'all really come from Wisconsin. Even the one guy I met who was from UW-Madison doesn't even live there. So that tells you what you need to know. I just celebrated my 3rd anniversary last week with my wife. I met her at CrossFit, which the first rule of CrossFit is tell everyone that you do it. But it's humbling because not only am I not the smartest in the relationship, I'm not even the strongest. But about my professional career, I did join OWP in 2023. This is after working 14 years in operations at the West Gulf River Forecast Center. I think that's where my experience comes into play, and that's probably why I got the position that I have. I was deployed several times. The latest deployment I did was down in July 4th into Kerr County, which I saw a lot of posters about. I know a lot of you have looked into Kerr County. I was deployed for something extremely rare. I've never done it, and I hope to never do it again. I did 2D RAS modeling for search and rescue. I was actually what we called it hydroforensics. They were trying to find bodies. So it was one of the first and hopefully last times I have to do that. I was also deployed to Texas State Operations Center for Hurricane Harvey, Florida State Operations Center for Dorian and Ian, FEMA Region 6. So I've spent a lot of time in operations centers talking to emergency managers. I also was the team lead for the Department of Commerce agency priority goal. And that was way back, probably in like 2018, 2019, where I sat in front of emergency managers with the first versions of FIM and asked them, how would you use it? What would you do with it? And we got a lot of great feedback that led into Cairo projects, that led into what FIM looks like today, and have developed into how we're rolling it out. So the first thing I want to talk is today, the way we sit. Obviously, we all know Fred is our chief scientist. Fernando runs the geointelligence division. I run the FIM project. If you've met Carson, you obviously know he's in FIM development. Riley is newly here in our hydrofabric tech lead. And for HydroViz, many of you know Sean Crowley. He's actually one of the leads on HydroViz, along with me and Nick Chadwick. That's how it is today. When you get home and look on Monday, it will be different. We still have Fred as our chief scientist, but Fernando will now be the service development division lead. Not big change, but what it does mean is the whole water model team with Brian Cosgrove and all them will come under one roof for all services development. We'll change our name from the FIM program to geointelligence. That is simply so that the field, all the people working in the field understand we still do geointelligence. We just don't do FIM. And then all the rest really stays the same. We're just happy to have the National Water Model and FIM all under one roof. Easier to coordinate, easier to get your projects into operations. So the way I like to start most of my talks is why. Why we're here, why I'm here, why I do the job I do, and it's really the mission. And if I went through the mission statement for Cairo, for the Weather Service, for OWP, and there is some overlap, and the real overlap is trying to get things to operations, trying to get it in the hands of the people that save lives. There was a great quote from Robert from BYU. He said on Wednesday, one more peer-reviewed paper won't save the Salt Lake. I love that. I changed it to lives lost due to flooding, but that's where we're at. I know you guys are pressured to put out papers, to get published, to get funding. but remember where that's going. It's all going towards operations to save lives and property. And I'm going to talk to you today about how we've adjusted the way we protect life and property due to the presence of FIM. This was my graphic in Hurricane Harvey, and this was praised because this is the best they had. This was the information that went out across the entire state to help get people to safety during Hurricane Harvey. That was not even a decade ago, 2017. This, I don't think I have to really say much about it, but it obviously is not good enough to tell people where to put things, where to save lives, where to protect property. The point-based system with no idea of what impacts are going, what's going on, was the limit of what we had. When I think about what we had when I was sitting in the Emergency Operations Center, obviously I took the new NWIPS page. It wasn't even this fancy back in 2017. But you would click on a point, you would get a hydrograph, and you would get an impact statement in text. Sadly, this is still what a lot of river forecast centers use to project what is going on in a flood. Now, I took this impact statement, this exact impact statement from Houston, and I projected it onto a map, and the impact statement only really covered that road. So all these homes that you see around it, the roads around it that have been there are not in the impact statements. That's what FIM does. I know that road floods because of the impact statement. That's a great calibration and verification technique. In fact, a lot of you are trying to validate flood mapping. One great way is some poor little intern went through and geolocated about 30,000 impact statements so that you guys could verify those impact statements are being covered by FIM. But you can see that FIM paints the rest of the picture. So Carson and his team, since Harvey, were able to put together the continental scale flood mapping system. And nice graphic, Carson. I appreciate that. This graphic kind of shows if hand was projected everywhere where we have flood mapping. Our release format, we are not at 100% yet. That's for this September. We're really happy and proud to get to full release where the entire country will be covered by flood inundation mapping. We did the phased rollout simply because to allow development and feedback to catch up to each other so that by this September we have one of the best versions of FIM out there. So I take you back to Houston, and I take you back to this image because this image was taken from a drone shortly after Harvey and the scrambling that people try to get to safety. You see high-profile vehicles, that very large tan vehicle in the center. Those are $250,000 apiece. Because we did not have mapping at the time, they did not know where to put the trucks. They staged 10 of them around the city and lost 9 of them. So quick math, you can see they lost almost $2.5 million simply because we didn't have a map. There's a financial impact directly because flood inundation mapping was not available at the time. I take the same image today, and now I'm able to project over the street, and they'd be able to know that that entire street was going to be flooded. This is a static map they could be using today. That's what the difference is with flood inundation mapping into operations. The goal is really a common operating picture, right? We want people to use a national water model so they can have a forecast everywhere. They can take that forecast, they can turn it into a map, zoom into a neighborhood, and have actionable local intelligence from the current floods and the impending floods, the forecast floods. That's where we make our money, is the forecast. Can you react and act before? We've put it in front of a lot of EMs over the last 4 years, and we still see limited action taken from knowing that a flood is going to hit them. I'm going to give you an example, and it's not an easy one to give. This is Lucas Warren. He's 4 at the time, on May 4th, 2024. His parents, driving home late at night, saw cars go through a flooded roadway, and they decided that they could make it too. They drove through the roadway. When they got into there, their car flipped, and Lucas and his parents were both thrown from the vehicle. His father lost grip of Lucas, but luckily his mother, clinging to a branch, was able to hang on and grab Lucas. Cars behind him called for help, and help was dispatched to the area. There was one cop in the area, one available police officer to activate search and rescue. When he tried to get there, he, and this is his camera, hit another road that was completely flooded. For 2 hours, his mom tried to hold on to him until she finally had to let go. She was rescued 15 minutes after he was lost. There was a flood map. It was available, and this was 30 miles from my house while I slept. The emergency response vehicle got stuck in a road on its way out there, couldn't cross over to get to the area where they were holding for dear life. We lost Lucas that day. The parents survived, and I couldn't imagine a worse travesty for a parent. So what kind of response do we have? We take a lot of losses in the weather service in terms of losing life, but I don't think it's a failure unless you don't do anything about it. Carson and his team put together, we need to make FIMPACT. We need to be able to demonstrate the impacts of FIM so that it is easier for people to understand what they may be getting into. Showing building footprints underwater, having bridges either inundated or not inundated clearly on our mapping, and most importantly and most recently, we've added road networks to our flood mapping. This shows which roads may be impacted by flooding. I think it's pretty common knowledge that most of the lives lost during operations is from people driving through floodwaters. So this roads, I think, is going to be the really biggest impact. And I have a good example. I don't want to bring everything down. Georgetown, Texas. I'm really proud of this because this forecaster that put out this flood map gave it to the emergency manager at Georgetown, Texas, the night before this flood hit. Said that apartment complex in that yellow is going to flood. The people inside will be trapped, and this is going to happen overnight. The emergency manager took action, evacuated everyone from that apartment building. That apartment building did flood, including an 80-year-old woman. Everyone was safe. No lives were lost in Georgetown, Texas. You can see even from the picture where they took with trees bent over and everything, the flood was pretty bad in that area. But FIM actually saved lives. I don't know if anyone notices the date. That was just one of 3 significant flooding areas on 4th of July. And if you look at this map and you think, wow, rainfall, man, it was really bad in San Saba, really bad in Williamson County, which is where Georgetown is. Doesn't look that bad down to the south, which is where Kerr is. And I think that's where the beauty of being a hydrologist is. It's not just turning rain and saying the rain is going to cause bad flooding. Hydrology is being able to figure out where that flooding is going to occur, no matter what the rainfall amount is. One of the most important things I think we've been discussing the last few days is rain rate and with flash flooding. That's really something we'd like to connect. But I did want to go down and Kerr, so I apologize. It's a sensitive issue. I think we're still all recovering. 4th of July, this is 4 a.m. on the South Fork of the Guadalupe River, and this is what was available in terms of FIM, in terms of a hydrograph for Hunt. Now Hunt, is this going to work? Nope. Hunt is way up there up the north, you can see. And Camp Mystic is at that second convergence. Camp Mystic is obviously where those girls were. And at 4 a.m., this is what was crossing into their bunks. They had about 30 minutes before the water was at the foot of the bunk, before it had reached 8 feet up in the bunks. 32 girls were lost there, and the most important one, I guess, because I think they're all important, but if you've ever been to the city of Houston or gone to Sam Houston State, Sam Houston's great-great-great-granddaughter is still the only one missing. Everybody focuses on Camp Mystic, but if you ever see an image like that, that is probably the most terrifying image. Camp Mystic, we lost 32 people. At that campground there, we lost close to 48. That campground was full. It's 4th of July weekend. It's nighttime. Everyone's sleeping. The water rose in a half hour, tore through the campground, took every single mobile camper off their platform there and downstream. What a wall of water kind of looks like is hard, and I'm going to try and demonstrate it because this is Wally. He is not the tallest person, so this isn't the most egregious comparison. He's what, 5'4"? Taller. You're taller, I think. 1 Ed is what this is. So this is about 2 Wallies tall. That's an official unit of measurement, and you can see it's scraping the bark of the tree. But as I went up, you can still see scraping of the bark of the tree, and you can see in the background how much water was pushing down trees and forests in the background. This was about 4 wallies tall, so now we're getting close to 20 feet. You zoom out again, you see broken branches there at the top. Now we're getting close to 25 feet, 5 wallies tall. And if you zoom out again, you still see broken branches all the way at the top. The water was about 35 to 40 feet tall. And what you don't see is that little slab on the right, left, on the side there, that was a house, and there were people in it. So that's how much water was going over their home and taking all their belongings and life away. To put it in perspective, to give you some context, the lives lost in Texas in 2025 were more than every other state combined over the last 10 years. That includes Helene, that includes Maria, and this is all directly from flooding. So we lose life very quickly in flooding, and sometimes without warning. And so when we want to protect life, we have to think of these extreme events and take them seriously. And we did. Again, it's only a failure if you don't respond, if you don't make a change. Riley and Carson came along and they said, there is a rapidly updating flow model out there. It's called Flash. It's not the greatest, but it's available. And we know the water model will eventually get to a sub-hourly and allow us to have some rapidly updating flows to generate a FIM from. But this is what Flash would have shown at 4 a.m. Camp Mystic completely submerged by 2 different modeling, not just the hydrophobic, and giving you some kind of a chance to understand how much flooding was coming to Camp Mystic. And today, it is actually operational in terms that the forecasters can see it, they can look at it, they're giving us feedback on it, they can look at the 3 different model types, and we hope to get good feedback to continue to push this Flash FIM out. The other thing is, and this is really what we think is the future, we call it lo-fi or likelihood of FIM. It's a percentage based of what could happen. It's ensembled in terms of using previous forecasts. It kind of collects, this one is the short range, so it collects the previous 6 hours, 1 hour forecasts, lumps them together, so we can get a percentage. It also includes the variability of the physics from the Manning's equation for every reach, pre-calculated so we understand what kind of variability we have for not understanding the slope, not understanding the Manning's number perfectly. So when we put that variability in, you can see the same image at 4 a.m. shows that Camp Mystic is underwater, and there is a wall of water moving downstream. This recently was also put into testing operations. Our field forecasters can go in there, they can look at it, give us feedback. Working with social science and Cairo, we'll be able to get this product to what we hope to be the standard of the future, that people can now understand what is your threshold of tolerance. Do I leave at 25%? Do I leave at 10%? Do I have to wait to 50%? At least gives them more options than just, yes, it's going to flood, no, it's not. So I just wanted to leave you with probably the questions we've been getting asked all day. What can we work on? And I cornered Riley and Carson last night, and I said, if I were to tell everyone in the room what are some projects we really wanted to work on, they gave me some answers. So I wanted to leave you with something tangible. This is the only team we have. You guys are part of our FIM team. There is no other team competing with us and doing what we can do. So if you're relying on someone else to come along and save our day, save these people, they're not coming. It's us. So for hydrofabric, we really need continuous virtual observed topobathy available at all national water model reaches. Again, we're dreaming. This is dream what we want. We know it's very difficult to do, but we also know everyone in this room has the capability to do it. The water model and the FIM use 2 different hydrofabrics, and we don't know if we can merge the 2. We would love some analysis to figure out, is the hydrofabric that the FIM is working on, divides and catchments, going to work if we merge it with the water model so we don't have to crosswalk the water model to FIM? I don't know if it's possible. That's a research question. Multi-model solutions to improve hand capabilities where hand cannot be improved by parameters from the Manning's equation. I saw a great poster about using Triton, using RAS 2D. I do believe 2D modeling is the future. Help us figure that out and where it can be effectively used. And it has to be efficient. I mean, research is great. We love research. But we also need scalability and efficiency. And as Fernando always tells me, it's also got to be affordable. Pluvial flash flooding is probably one of the most integral parts that we don't have. And then lastly, with HydroViz, our social scientists would really love to help us out there. But recently, not recently, in the next, what do you say, about 6 months, we will have the entire impacts, structures, bridges, roads, in a library sitting in our repo. They're all going to be there just sitting there for every flood map that we make for the entire United States. What do we do with it? If I were to tell you the impacts across the entire nation right now, we have them in a library, how would you visualize it? What would you do with it? How can we tell our emergency managers how to utilize it? It's going to be there, and it's a good research question for Cairo to answer. And lastly, which is my personal thing, is how do we increase its utility? How do I get people to use this so that we don't lose another Lucas Warren? And I don't know how many people were registered, Siggy. How many were registered?
260.
260. So at Kerr, we lost 119 alone. So almost 2/3 of this entire conference gone. That's what we're trying to prevent. So when it's a late night and you're trying to finish your paper, when it's a really difficult time and you're worried about getting funding, remember, we think of you guys as the first step to improving operations, to protecting these lives. I made the joke yesterday that if you were to put us in stream orders, Cairo is stream order 1, 2, 3. Every good idea has to flow through you and start through you to get to operations. Carson's and Riley, they're 4, 5, and 6 stream orders. Taking your ideas, figuring out how to put it in operations. And then stream order 7, 8, 9 is getting that into the hands of someone who can pull or protect someone from the flood. So with that, I'm done. Thank you.